I also believe that you need to successfully teach self-defense along with what you're doing. You need to actually teach physical skills, because that's where a great deal of the perseverance and the comes from, is putting yourself up against something difficult. A profit is a reward. It's how capitalism works, how our market works, is that if you provide something that's scarce, it brings that to market, your people are going to pay a lot for that, okay? Because it's all about price, supply, and demand, right? Integrity is when you give your word on something, you deliver it. And that's what the program was about, was making sure we're actually successful at teaching character development.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Seven Figure Secrets podcast. My name is Jennifer Waters. I'm joined by my dad, Tommy Siegler, and our special guest, Mr. Stan Lee. Welcome, Stan. Excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Jennifer. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So for everybody who doesn't know, Stan is a monumental figure in the martial arts industry. He's actually a 40-year veteran of martial arts. He's owned a successful school for almost 30 years. He's been doing a lot of different things. You guys may know him from the Black Belt. It's a company dedicated to helping school owners teach character development, even to really young students. He's spoken at over, a dozen martial arts business conferences, a lot of topics around lifetime value of students, and he's a huge advocate. And he's basically semi-retired. He cruises around on his boat in the Caribbean. So, super excited. So, how did you start on this journey? Can I fill everybody in on that?
Which journey specifically? The fact that I'm currently sitting next to an island previously owned by someone who did not kill himself, or my martial arts journey? I've been on a lot of journeys. You're going to have to be more specific.
Yeah, maybe we start with the martial arts, because I think that might have started first for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Martial arts for me was a result of where I grew up. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Those of you who are familiar with the culture in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area, we have this state language called sarcasm. Maybe you've heard of it. And I was unusually gifted in this language. And so growing up, when people would say things to me, I would have quick, snappy comebacks. And when they couldn't top whatever it is I said, they would often try to hit me. And I decided I didn't like that part, and I couldn't really keep my mouth shut. So I decided to learn how to protect myself. And I was not as lucky as the current generations. We didn't have martial arts schools on every block and lots of opportunities. So the first thing I did, of course, was inspired by the various martial arts movies, especially by Bruce Lee, who's, still my inspiration. And I read the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and every other martial arts book and magazine I could get a hold of, and was inspired to pursue a very self-defense oriented martial arts philosophy. And when I went to college, I left Pennsylvania as fast as I could. I was accepted at Penn State and at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, and it was not a difficult choice to get out of the cold. So I moved to Florida, 17, and started training. And it's been, I wouldn't change a thing. It's been amazing.
That's fantastic. Crazy, right? How did you start Black Belt Principles? Was that based off of just teaching?
Let me just bring up one thing. I co-founded Black Belt Principles. My wife and partner, Sarah Tucker, is the other founder, and Black Belt Principles very much came from our combined experience. Coming up, learning the martial arts business, I learned very quickly, of course, that you're not just looking to make sure children have fun. You're not just looking to teach people to protect themselves, but our primary customers are parents, especially moms, who are heard about all those wonderful character development traits that children develop through martial arts training, and they're often more interested in the traits than they are in the training themselves. So we definitely wanted to include character development from the very beginning when we first started our school. And my wife has a very diverse background. She's an ex-theatrical actress, ex-television actress. She works for Fox Kid Club. She has 20, 30 years experience in children's entertainment and education. She was a member of a theatrical group that toured the U.S. and Canada, specifically to put on morality play. And it was our experience together that developed the uniqueness that is the Black Belt Principles system, which is basically, we teach, if you're going to teach morality, you need to teach it young, okay? It's very difficult to pick a 15, 16, 17-year-old, but it's very easy to imprint solid values in a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old if you can communicate to them in a way that they comprehend. So my wife's background in holding children's attention and in delivering moral values and character development traits to young children was how he was kind of inspired by my example in the dojo, doing mat chats, trying to set a positive example. And she developed what has now become, she's written, I think, 11 best-selling books on Amazon. We produced 2 cartoons and a complete character development curriculum that teaches in a visual way rather than a verbal way, because young kids don't have the vocabulary to wrap their mind around an abstract concept like perseverance or self-discipline. They learn from our example. They learn from watching us. They learn from what they see. So we developed a visually based system, and my wife did this through producing animated films and coloring sheets and visual aids that teach these traits from a visual perspective that young kids can easily look at and understand, comprehend, and retain.
That's really, really a lot of detail into developing out that program. And that's really cool. I actually had no idea that you guys, that she had that background, and I think that's something that's definitely missing from a lot. I would say people that are just saying that martial arts is going to make you more focused or more confident, but it doesn't actually happen unless you teach the students this. In the class.
Yeah, this is a huge, huge problem in the industry, in that, everybody is always talking about enrollments. We need more enrollments. And the reason they constantly need more enrollments is the parent doesn't see the connection between learning that traditional form, which pursuing excellence in anything is going to eventually develop self-discipline. But it's very difficult for the parent to realize what the process is doing. So it's very important to communicate. Oh, Val, you want to go up forward now? Okay, great. Thanks. It's very difficult to communicate. Those schools that do attempt to teach character development and they pull the kids over and do a little mat chat and talk about the importance of self-discipline and keeping your room clean and this, that, or whatever. The parents appreciate that talk. But in most of the time, the kids aren't really getting any of it at all because they're just not verbal at that age. For example, imagine you're teaching 4-year-old how to do a front kick. Are you going to tell them to lift their knee up until their thigh is parallel with the floor, flex their quadricep, striking with the ball of the foot at this specific? No, they're lost after the first couple of words of that, right? But you can easily watch up to that bag or target and say, hey, watch me do this, do a front kick. And after a couple of tries, they're going to get better and better at it because they see and copy. That's what little kids do. So it's a little bit more difficult to do that when you say, all right, I'm going to demonstrate self-discipline. Well, think about the way all great teachers in the past have tried. They've taught through stories, right?
Yeah.
They taught through parables. They taught through art. They taught in a lot of different ways. So by creating these visual aids with little characters that we get the kids very, very focused on, because one of the first things we do to those little kids is we send them a cartoon that shows them that our little character is basically equal to SpongeBob SquarePants, the Paw Patrol, or anybody else they watch on TV. So they watch that a million times on their phone or on their tablet. And so when they come in for their first mat chat and we put a visual aid up on the screen with those characters, they are drawn in because to them, this is like a sequel to their favorite cartoon. They can't wait to find out what Harry's up to next, right?
Yeah.
And so when we will hit a particular character development topic or different visual aids over the course of a month. And these kids really understand because they've watched Harry show an example of self-discipline is cleaning his room. And an example of self-discipline is, doing what he's told without question or without being watched. And we'll continually to go over those lessons using these visual representations of what's happening. And the kids really get it. So when you succeed at actually changing the behavior and character of children, well, what results is you don't have that, oh my God, I got to enroll 25 students this month because I'm going to be losing money if I don't. You keep the students that you enrolled to begin with because you're actually fulfilling your promise. So it's all about integrity, right? Integrity is when you give your word on something, you deliver it. And that's what the program was about, was making sure we're actually successful at teaching character development to children who might have difficulty wrapping their mind around an abstract concept.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you seen like a shift just in your perspective in the industry with over these years on character development? Have you seen like maybe it wasn't as focused on and now it's more focused on, or do you think there's still just not enough attention to it?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I think that it's good that more and more people are realizing that a focus on character development is important, and more people are incorporating it. In many cases, I feel it's gone too far that way, in that there are a lot of schools out there that are huge commercial successes. But I mean, Jennifer, I've seen you in the ring. I know that you know how to fight. Okay. I also believe that you need to successfully teach self-defense along with what you're doing. You need to actually teach physical skills, because that's where a great deal of the perseverance and the person comes from, is putting yourself up against something difficult and then busting through those barriers and going, wow, that was hard, but I did it. So it's very important to have high standards. It's very important to have to teach good physical movements that involve contact and reality. And I think we've seen a lot of it move towards just talking about character development, and not visiting those physical skills maybe as seriously as we used to in the old days. I think you can do both and still be commercially successful. I think there can be a balance. But unfortunately, most of the character development that's being taught out there is more character development theater than character development. And what I mean by that is, if you pull your kids aside and do a mat chat so the parents can hear, and you're talking about character development, you're putting on a show for the parents. You're not effectively communicating necessarily to the children. I mean, some of the sharpest ones may get what you're talking about. The older kids, certainly, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, you can have a conversation with those children and they'll pick things up. But I think that we need to focus on results, right? On delivering character development, not just talking about it. Right. There needs to be some statistics kept. There needs to be some results checked, just as we do in our businesses, on how successful we are at delivering what we promise.
Stan, that was a mouthful. I'm telling you, you have a lot of insight, Appreciate it a whole lot. Now, you're a mixed martial artist with a focus on self-defense. Break that down for us a little bit and tell us. We all have a concept of what the martial art, or what mixed martial arts is. If you've watched the UFC, right, you see all that stuff, and you also, most of us, especially us old timers, know what self-defense is about, right? It's not just sparring, it's escaping things, it's preventing things from happening, things of that nature. How do you combine those two with your mixed martial arts background and the self-defense?
Well, that's the thing, is you won't find any chain link in my school. That's not what we're about. I was a mixed martial arts.
So you see, like, throwing somebody in the cage, that's not happening, even though
there's not. Well, for a number of reasons. And don't get me wrong, I was a huge supporter of the early UFC before it became a mega sport. I mean, I was actually thanked for some of the lobbying work I did by Jeff Blatnick on a UFC broadcast, because we had created an organization called the Pro Mixed Martial Arts North America back when the UFC was taken off cable due to John McCain's political push and this, that, or whatever. I was really active in promoting the sport at that time. I wasn't teaching fighters, mind you, but I was because I felt that the early UFC was a great laboratory to prove to people what physical techniques really work. I thought it was an amazing opportunity to bring some truth back into the martial arts, because Hollywood had confused people for a very long time on what actually was effective in self-protection. But and I think now that the pendulum has swung a lot in the other direction, there are a lot of people that have embraced grappling, that have embraced MMA, but at the same time, MMA is now a sport. And there are so many limits, whether it be weight divisions, whether it be the fact that you can't kick a person when they got 3 points of contact with the ground. You can't hit someone in the back of the head if they roll. There are so many things in there that take away the self-defense aspects that MMA now, although, I mean, I'm not going to say, obviously, the average MMA fighter is going to be able to protect himself quite well against an untrained person. But there are some bad habits. I mean, especially, I like to talk a lot about, I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu since 1993, since before the first UFC. And right now, so much of it is focused on competition and winning within the rules of a game that I regularly post commentary on stuff where you see people just butt shooting all across the ring and how absolutely silly that is, and how much playing by those competition rules are destroying the self-defense applicability of jiu-jitsu. Because so many people are not worried about controlling distance, protect themselves from strikes. They just rely on the rules, right? They don't mind going for a berimbolo or going right for a leg lock when the person's standing over them because the other person isn't allowed to kick them in the face, right? I think that and I tell my students when we're grappling, and at any time you're grappling, if you say to yourself, would the other person be punching me in the face right now? Then you're in a bad position. You need to change where you are, right? You shouldn't stay there and go, oh, thank God the rules are protecting me right now. So you need to control distance. You need to establish your clinch. You need to do something. So, so the curriculum that we wrote is focused, and I got a lot of this from some of my firearms instructors that I worked with. It focuses on what is most likely to happen to you, right? What is probable. And then after we deal with what's probable, let's talk about what's plausible, what could happen, but maybe it's a little less likely. And lastly, we're going to worry about possible, okay? So most of what I'm teaching are children and families, okay? As much fun as it might be to train fighters, you don't end up in a yacht in the Caribbean if you train fighters. Because they are the people that go to you, oh, Miss Jennifer, that tuition thing? Yeah, I'm going to get you on that next week, okay? Yeah, cool. All right, thanks. So, and I originally got involved in martial arts because as a child, I was being, call it bullied. And I wanted to learn how to protect myself. So most of my passion is teaching children self-defense, although obviously the same movements are applicable everywhere else. And so we talk about the things that are most likely to happen. So from a martial arts standpoint, should I be taking a 6-year-old child and teaching them how to pass the guard?
I mean, probably not for the 6-year-old.
Well, from a self-defense perspective, the only way he's going to need to pass the guard is if he picks fights in my parking lot. Okay, that's the only time he's going to find himself in a guard, right? So our students, what we do probably is more similar to greasy combative, where we're talking about if somebody puts you in a headlock, how to take them down, and get them out position. If somebody takes a wild, redneck roundhouse at you and swings at you, how to shoot underneath them, double leg them, get them out, achieve them out position so they can't hurt you anymore. So we're teaching mixed martial arts from a self-defense perspective, not from a cage perspective, right? We're not teaching, Brazilian jiu-jitsu from a points perspective. If you ask my young student why they get the mount position, no one is going to say 4 points. They have no idea that's 4 points in a jiu-jitsu competition. They know that because I can hit him and he can't hit me, I've got gravity helping me punch, but he's got gravity holding him back. Difficult for him to breathe. It's easy for me to breathe. So we're talking about real physical skills and consequences, not point systems or referees or rings or judges or any of that.
Yeah. Wow. So you talked about it briefly a little earlier, but from this self-defense perspective with the mixed martial arts mixture, how did you start weaving in the character development and getting that as a part of it? What were the very beginning stages of that when you came about and you said, this is all really cool, but I think we need to work on the mental aspect?
Well, I think that philosophy is something that has been part of the martial arts since its beginning, right? If all you do is teach physical skills and don't supplement that with some philosophy, you're creating monsters, right? We need to make sure that people understand. And when I first got involved in the martial arts business, I never actually wanted to be a school owner growing up because all the school owners I knew were poor and I wasn't interested in being poor. And I actually was, when I graduated college, I became a stockbroker for 2 years, worked in finance. And then when I realized that those people didn't have any integrity, I withdrew from that occupation. And my martial arts instructor at the time had asked me if I would take some of my sales skills, some of my business skills, and apply them to building his. And so one of the first things we did is my instructor had joined Educational Funding Company, and this was back in the early '90s when Educational Funding Company was probably the primary source of business information for our industry.
Yeah.
And we had gone to seminars, and we had learned, and I had learned a great deal from some of the greatest people in the history, people like Stephen Oliver, David Eaton, so many of the greats in our industry were part of that time. And of course, they Nicholas Kokinas wrote the Student Creed, which actually we use in the same Student Creed that he developed for EFC is something that we use throughout our character development system. And so I was always, from the very beginning, when I started teaching for my instructor was a phenomenal martial artist, a great, one of the best strikers I ever knew. And he also was a very early adopter of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and other things. He was very much interested in practical self. He was the next Green Beret. He spent 2 tours in Vietnam, 14 years in Asia, and he was afraid of nothing.
Jeez.
Except teaching a room full of 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, because he gave that job to me immediately. I had to learn how to hold their attention very, very quickly. That was one of my first jobs, besides teaching introductory lessons and teaching a beginner class for my instructor, was teaching the 6th and under class. So that was where I got a lot of my expertise as far as dealing with those kids. It was from being there. And let me tell you though, sales is communication, right? Yeah. So there's, if you're a good instructor, you can be a good salesperson. If you can hold someone's attention, if you can build rapport with that person and get them to understand, to like you and take direction from you, then you're going to be a good salesperson too. So I kind of fell into that part of the business. And when I started doing mat chats in the very early part of my school, my wife created some visual aids for me with some characters that she had developed. And we found that they were really a big hit with the little kids, that they understood better. And so it started with a flip chart. Black Belt Principle started with a flip chart of Harry choosing between fruit and candy and talking about self-control. And a picture of Harry picking up his toy off the floor as an example of self-discipline. And so the whole thing started as just a curriculum that we developed for ourselves. And then my wife then decided she was going to write books. And I thought, well, I'm not sure if books are really the way to go because the ability for the kids in this age range to read. I said, why don't we try producing it as a cartoon? And so my wife was actually going to go to animation school, to the digital animation and video effects school at the Universal lot in Orlando. And I was while we were there, we toured the campus, and I was doing the math in my head. Okay, it's going to cost like $20,000 in tuition. I'm going to have to buy her a new $20,000 car to commute back and forth to Orlando, because we're on the East Coast of Florida. We're in Ormond Beach. And I said, honey, you don't really want to learn how to animate. You want to produce an animation. I said, why don't we just take this $40,000 or $50,000 I'm going to have to spend and use it to produce something? So what we actually did is we hired one of the professors from the school and one of his graduates to produce our first cartoon. And this cartoon was Harry's first martial arts lesson. And what it actually is a perfectly taught martial arts introductory lesson taught by a 7-foot animated lizard, so people actually pay attention to it.
That's interesting there. Yeah.
And it's a huge tool, one of the cornerstones of our program as far as getting the kids interested in these characters. And we use it as a huge learning tool in between. We usually teach 2 private introductory lessons. So in between introductory lesson 1 and introductory lesson 2, we send that home as homework. So this 4, 5, 6-year-old will watch this cartoon hundreds of times in between his first lesson and the second lesson. When he comes back, he knows his student creed. He's snapping to attention. He's copying the characters and trying to be them as much as possible. And when the parents see that huge difference between when they first brought that kid in there and he was bouncing off the walls and how he's acting in the second lesson, they're already convinced that this is what they want their child to do. They've seen the benefits already. Because what happens, if either of you remember having young children and you put an animated program in front of them, they're not like us. They're not going to watch it once and say, let me watch something else. They're not loop it over and over until they have it memorized. And that's something cognitive about children. They get a little hit of dopamine every time they watch something again and they remembered something about the last time they watched it. They get a little hit. They go, oh, I remember this part. Oh, I remember this part. And that gets them want to watch it over and over again. And what's happening when they're doing that? They're internalizing all those lessons. So when Harry goes home from his first introductory lesson and cleans his room because instructor Dan told he had a little Obi-Wan moment where he has this thought bubble appear over his head in the cartoon, where instructor Dan saying that example of self-discipline is keeping your room clean without being told. So Harry cleans his room. Well, then what do you think little Johnny does after he watches that 4 or 5 times? He goes up and cleans his room, and Mom is like, what is going on here? And it's a huge part of everything that we do.
And Stan, look, you hit a trigger a while ago with me. I cannot get the song from The Little Mermaid out of my head now because I saw that thing a million times watching my daughter Jennifer here.
Yes, absolutely. It's true. It's the way they learn. And there's a lot of pushes in the industry to teach character development in different ways.
Yeah.
But there are few as powerful as, by example, people actually. It's very difficult to demonstrate. You can demonstrate some qualities in your class. You can say, okay, we're all going to do 100 front kicks. Don't stop, show perseverance, right? You can go over that. But it's very difficult to teach people the advantages and the consequence of those acts, right? In our cartoons and in my wife's book, there's a beginning, there's a problem, there's a conflict, and it's solved. And people get to eat. It's difficult to do that in your class. You're gonna somehow show somebody a lifetime, a lifetime benefit of a life skill by doing that. It's hard, but it's pretty easy to do in a book, in a movie, or in a story. You have enough time to communicate these things, and you can see the effect on the character. So there's a lot of people out there, and they've got good hearts, and they're trying really hard to teach character development. But why does our industry have such a retention problem if all these other ways are so effective?
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. So, I mean, if you're talking to like a school owner that they just go, yeah, but how do I fit this in my class curriculum? Like we only have 30 minutes. We only have 45 minutes. We only have an hour. This is going to take too long. I can't sit my kids down for 10 minutes.
No, it's not 10 minutes. It's 2 minutes. We do the last 2 minutes of every class. The last 2 minutes of every class is all that has to be done. And then the rest of it is homework. So what we also do, so imagine, we talked about the visual nature of children. So what we do is we sit them down in front of the visual aid, and it is a very easy, it doesn't have to be scripted. Your instructor, and anybody can do this, by the way, and this is a real important thing, because I imagine, Mr. Siegler, in your class, right, you probably don't teach every 6 and under class yourself anymore, right? Even though
that's why I know, right?
Well, I know exactly what that's like. So here's the thing. But obviously, as the owner of your school, as the grandmaster instructor, obviously any character development is going to come from your life experience, and that's going to be a powerful state, right? But how do you get your 17-year-old instructor to get up there and do a talk on life skills? How much life experience does that 17-year-old have that he can draw from to teach about the benefits of perseverance, right? So by having this system in place, anybody can teach it, because what we do is a question and answer session through the visual aid. And this is very powerful. We've learned through the research we've done, this is where Sesame Street was so effective, and also where Blue's Clues was so effective, is there was always interaction with a human and a fantasy element, asking questions to draw out answers. So the example is, if we have a picture of Harry cleaning his room in a visual aid. Harry is our little redheaded lizard character that my wife invented. Funny story. And what happens is, we'll pull all the kids over and say, hey, it's Harry time. Let's see what Harry's up to. So let's take a look up here. What's Harry doing? And the kids will raise their hand. You'll call, oh, Harry's cleaning his room. Oh, great. That's awesome. That's really good. I'm glad. Hey, is Harry's mom in the room? Do you see Harry's mom standing there pointing at him, telling him to clean his room? No. So Harry decided to clean his room without being told. Wow. I bet his mom is really, really proud of him. He's really showing self-discipline. So the Mad Chat is something as simple as that. All right. Yeah. It takes a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And the big thing is how many times have you done a mat chat where the 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds are laying on their back, looking at the ceiling, rolling around, touching the person next to them? When we pull them up to this visual aid, they're interested in what's going on because they've watched the cartoons. They have the book at home. Harry is a celebrity to them. Everybody else they watch on TV, and they can't wait to see what he's up to in his life and what adventure he's going on. So the kids today, especially, what kid is not walking around with a tablet in today's world? So we got to try to, I know we like to say, well, we got to get the kids off the tablets. I don't want to have one of my kids watching cartoons. Well, listen, that's the way they learn, and you either adapt or die. That's the way the world works right now, right? Those kids are used, and they're going to learn something from watching that tablet. Why don't we try to give them something positive?
I love it. That's awesome. That is awesome, man. That's crazy. You mentioned and talked about starting, students young and retaining them for life. Why do you feel like this is important, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons. I am a big advocate of after-school martial arts. Okay. And that's my primary program that I teach is our after school and summer. And I know there are a lot of instructors out there that like to say, oh, that's babysitting. I don't want to be a babysitter, blah, blah, blah. Well, the plain fact of the matter is this. If you want to make good students, who's going to make a better student? Somebody who has somebody twice a week for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or somebody who has someone 3.5 to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Who are you going to have more influence over? Right? Who is going to be who is going to better see your example, right? Because when those kids are in your after school program, you control what they're doing, right? So teach them, right? We teach four after school martial arts classes a day, okay? And 5 days a week in our program. That's why they're there. That's what we do, right? And that allows me to make incredible martial artists. These kids are unbelievable. They can strike, they can throw, they can grapple, they can submit, they can do everything. Because I'm going to enroll that child in my 6 and under class when he's 4, 5, 6 years old. And then when he gets into kindergarten, he's going to join my after school program. He might even stay in my evening classes and do both because he's so addicted at that point. And the point is when you start kids at 4 or 5 years old, they can't remember not doing martial arts. It becomes a part of that, right?
The product of that.
There you go.
3 years old.
I don't remember starting.
Exactly. So when you talk about making the very best black belts you can make, the very best students, the very best martial artists, the more you see them, the longer you keep them, the better they're going to be. Now, from a business perspective, I did have a huge benefit over most people in starting their school in that I had already worked for my instructor for 2 years before I opened my own. And I had learned from some of the best, most professional school owners in the 90s through Educational Funding Company. But even more importantly, I already had a business degree and sales experience before I ever did martial arts for a living. Right. Mm-hmm. And in business, we have this concept called the lifetime value of a customer, right? And that most business is built around bringing somebody in, getting them to get to know you, keeping your promises to them, and getting repeat business for life. That is the same. That is what McDonald's wants to do. It's the reason that Big Mac is the same every time you go there. They're looking to consistently keep their promises to you. Yeah. If you want a thriving business, if you don't want to be spending every day pulling your hair out going, oh my God, if I don't enroll 25 students by the end of the month, we're going back, then you've got to work on delivering what you've promised and keeping them there so that you actually build the student body that you need to pay your bills and have a good lifestyle for yourself and maybe have a yacht someday in the Caribbean. I don't know. If that's your dream. So our whole system is designed where I don't have to enroll 25 people a month. I probably don't have to enroll 5 people a month. And we make all the income we need to provide me with this lifestyle and everything else. But I also do that through paying close attention to costs, right? Yeah. Because it's not, a lot of people like to talk about, my school's grossing $2 million this year. Well, that's great. How much of it went in your pocket?
Yeah.
That's the number I want to hear about, right? Well, so it's about focusing on the net and not focusing on the growth. And the idea is that a single student, if they join my school at 4, they join my after school program at 5, they go through my after school program all the way through middle school with after school and summer camp. Then usually at middle school, they're pretty close to testing for their black belt in our system. So then through high school, they're also training in my evening class. Okay. We're talking about a student value there of something like, I think the last time I computed it, something like $40,000.
Yeah.
Student value in a single student, right? Well, you can afford to do things right if you've got that kind of student value, right? So our program is designed just that if we enroll 20 kindergartners in our after-school program in the beginning of the school year, we're going to be full, and those students that 20 other students are going to graduate out of 8th grade, because an after-school program is a need, not a want.
Right.
Yeah.
And most after-school programs, the kids just sit around on a playground or in a cafeteria for 4 hours. They provide almost zero value other than, hey, a safe place for your kid to be. And they're not necessarily a safe place because they're usually lightly supervised by people who don't have a financial obligation to make sure your child is learning anything or safe or anything else. So our competition is not. So we, in our town, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, the real estate professionals, the people that are doing well and making good money, but need a safe place for their kid to go because they actually have to be at work, they're in my program in our town.
Yeah.
Right. And we usually run between 75 and 100 after school. But then we have our evening classes are really almost more of an afterthought. They're there for the kids who are homeschooled. They're there for the kids, but that don't need after school, or for the students that either aren't old enough to be in the after school program yet, or have graduated from middle school. And obviously we don't pick up high school.
Right.
So that's what our evening classes are all about, or for the stay-at-home moms that don't need that. That's the way our program is structured. And so it doesn't have to be this huge scramble every month where we're only you can focus on taking care of the people you have if your staff isn't scrambling full of people every month, and that's all they think about.
Yeah. So what time do your evening classes actually start if you're doing
our first evening class doesn't start until 5:45, and that's actually our 600 class. Our 600 class goes from 5:45 to 6:15. And that's for our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and some of the 5 and 6-year-olds that don't need after school. But then in our after school program, our school districts leave out at 2:30. So at 3:10, we have a 6 and under class, an after school 5 and 6-year-old class going on. And then that class is 30 minutes. And then we have the other after school classes we do are 40 minutes. They used to be 45, but our school district recently changed their dismissal time from 2 o'clock to 2:30, and we lost 30 minutes. So we had to cut 5 minutes off 3 of the classes in order to make it fit to still be able to offer the 4 class and service all our students. So we cut a little bit back off the warm up and continue to deliver the same quality class we were delivering before. So yeah, we have 4 back-to-back after-school classes every day with about 20 to 25 students each one.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, what about the instructor who's sitting here and just going, yeah, I could never charge somebody $40,000 over the course of the lifetime of being a student. That sounds kind of like wrong to me. Like I'm losing integrity for charging people money. I mean, we hear this all the time. I'm sure you being in the industry, you hear it. Like, what would you say to that school owner that's really stuck? You know, they're stuck in that mindset.
I do an interview with all of my black belt candidates on the day they receive their black belt, and we don't give them out easily. I mean, you have to earn a black belt in our school.
Yeah.
Our whole program is based on meeting standards, and if you don't, we fail people. When I go out to my after-school testing, I usually quote Gandalf, "You shall not pass," okay? Because I'm going to fail 3/4 of them. And that's one of the advantages of having the after-school program is if Johnny cries and says, "Mommy, I didn't get my belt," Mommy has to go to work tomorrow. So Mommy's sending you back to after-school karate. Sorry. There's no quitting. So we can do that, and it gives us the ability to really help push them through those boundaries. If they don't get something right, they continue to work on it. And the nice thing too about after school, sidetrack a little bit, is that, we do testing in our after school program every 2 weeks because these kids are getting 5 classes a week. So they're getting a month's worth of classes every 2 weeks. So I'm not talking belt testing every 2 weeks, but I'm talking one student is testing for a set of stripes, the other student is testing for a second set of stripes, and the third student may be testing for his belt, right? So that it's rotating. But they have the ability to earn belts quickly if they know their stuff. But our standards are so high, they're still probably earning their belt every 2, 3, 4 months. Like people would normally. But that's also because our standards are that high. The only passing grade is 100%. But getting back to your question, the interview question that I give the parents on the day they earn their black belt is I say to them, okay, I have a question for you. By my estimation, you probably have paid me $25,000, $30,000, over the last 8 to 10 years that your child has been training with me. If I wrote you a check for the money right now, and all we'd have to do is have your child forget everything they ever learned from me, would you take the money?
Yeah.
No one has taken the money. I've offered to double it. they still wouldn't take the money. What is the value of not giving up? What is the value of knowing when your daughter goes to college that no one's going to be able to mess with? What is that worth, right? I think that if you view what you do is equal to Little League baseball, okay, maybe you shouldn't charge that much, right? But if you're changing lives, which you should be, you have the opportunity to change lives, you should be. If you're changing lives, then how much is it worth to change a life?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people who don't realize, either the people that say that either aren't delivering enough value, and that's why they feel guilt, right? Or they're delivering much value and they just don't recognize one or the other.
Wow. So, got a question for you. Three things that you'd love to see more school owners doing in order to be successful, and what do you feel people in general are not doing in this industry?
I would say that every school owner needs to do an audit of their marketing. They need to look at their marketing. They need to make sure that marketing is benefit oriented. And then they need to actually deliver the benefits they're promising. I think there's way too much bait and switch out there. There's either poor marketing. I tell you, I have some competitors, if you call them that, in my town. And when I see their marketing, I just smile because it talks about how many black belts they have and what organizations they're attached to and certified by, and all their instructors are guaranteed internationally certified, blah, 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 blah. And they have no idea what the person who is out there who is looking for martial arts is interested in and how it's going to change their life. And I thank God those people are there, because if they ever left, somebody who knows what they're doing might enter my town and I might not be able to spend so much time on my yacht.
Yeah.
It is. So, I mean, you need to realize from a marketing perspective that your job is to tell people how you change lives, and communicate that feeling to them that you're going to solve their problems. And if your marketing is not solving their problems, then you're not going to enroll a lot of students. And then the second thing is to keep those students. You have to make sure you're actually delivering what you're promising. And I think that is probably the biggest problem in nursery right now. There are so many, I mean, I hate to use the word McDojo, right? That's the industry term for it these days. There are so many schools out there that advertise and market very, very well, but do such a poor job at delivery that all they do is keep tying belts on people's waists because they're not actually delivering what they promise. Or they'll promise a black belt in 2 years. My students are maybe purple belts in 2 years. They promise things, and they're doing, once again, martial arts theater and not teaching martial arts. They're putting on a show that kind of looks like martial arts to a student body that only knows, hey, I heard martial arts is good for my kid, but they don't know how to evaluate what's going on the mat. And if you're out there on the mat just playing games and not actually teaching people how to protect themselves, and mom doesn't know how to interpret the difference, well, I heard martial arts and they say he's wearing a black belt, he must know what he's talking about. I think that we need to realize that it is possible to teach real martial arts and be commercially successful as long as you pair it with character development, that you don't have to water down your curriculum, that contact is important and necessary in teaching perseverance, that none, the reason you have to enroll 25 to 50 people a month is you're not teaching the people that come in anything and they're not seeing the value and they're leaving. Show value and they'll stick with you and they'll get to those benefits.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was 1.5 things. I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. Look,
I think that you one thing that you keep touching on, which is really a good point, is just that you can do both. You can run a very successful business that is fueled by your passion, right? Like you can at Seven Figure Dojo, we talk a lot about this, turning your passion into profit. It is possible. And I guess I could add to the end of that with integrity. Like you can do all of these things.
Yes, it is very, very much true. And you know what? The better you get at those things, the more money you're going to make. You guys know, by the way, one of my other side hobbies is economics. I read like 1,200-page economics treatises for fun. Okay.
I don't know anybody. I literally know no one that does that for fun.
yeah, you know the fun.
Well, I mean, Jennifer, you're my friend on Facebook, and anybody who's my friend on Facebook knows that I don't hold back my opinions on anything.
No,
right?
that's what
I am. Everybody knows I'm telling exactly how I feel, and the literal definition of profit in economics is the reward for providing a scarce resource. Okay, that's what a profit is. A profit is a reward. It's how capitalism works, how our market works. Is that if you provide something that's scarce, bring that to market, your people are going to pay a lot for that. Okay, because it's all about price, supply, and demand. Okay, so if you are providing character development and real self-defense, and the word gets out, you're providing a rare thing. Let's face it. It's one of the reasons I decided to come on this podcast with you, only because I've seen clips of Jennifer actual fighting. So I know I'm not talking to the average person out there trying to give business advice, right? Who doesn't know anything about anything. So what I'm saying is, yes, if you want to make profit, you need to provide something. You need to provide more. And my thought always was, if I am providing character development and my kids actually know how to fight, then I'm providing a greater value than the school down the street that's just punching and kicking the air and yelling hi-ya and never touches each other and is also teaching character development in their own way. I'm providing more. I'm providing something that's more valuable, and that's going to show in the long run. So yes, if you're good to people and you keep your promises and you don't screw people over, if you're not out there just to get people to sign contracts and collect the money but never deliver what you promised, I see a lot of school owners on social media complaining that people aren't fulfilling their contracts. You know, where can I get a good collection agency? Right? These people aren't paying. They promised to pay. Well, that's true, but did you deliver what you promised? That big flyer that they brought in that told them that you were going to teach their kids self-discipline. Did that kid become more disciplined while he was with you? And did it happen fast? Because let me tell you, people aren't going to wait 3 years to find that out. You better change their behavior in the first couple of weeks, or you're not going to see anything. So it's I think there's too much people not taking responsibility for themselves, and too many people. I mean, hey, it is true that society today is a little bit less committed. Can I say that with a straight face? I'm a little bit less committed than usual. But it's up to us. I think that what we teach is what the world needs more than ever.
Yeah, I agree.
More than ever. In a world full of snowflakes with zero resilience, in a world full of people who, want you to pay their student loans because they're not willing to get off their butt and do something and solve their own problems.
Yeah.
It isn't our students that are doing that. It's not your students, Jennifer, that are asking people to bail them out. It's not my students. They know to take care of themselves, and they become responsible, and they become, great human beings from doing what we do. The world needs us. And, when somebody needs something like that, it must be pretty scarce. So you've got the opportunity to make a nice living for yourself, changing lives. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
And because you have done that, you get the rewards, right? Like, we're our dream isn't to be floating around on a yacht. I'm sure Dad's going to ask you about that in a little bit. We decided to go all in on a farm
nice.
Invest into that, going to be adding animals and all kinds of things to it. But that was part of our dream. And obviously that, it's not all complete. There's all things that we're still adding and doing, but without having that profit, without being able to do that, accomplishing your dreams becomes extremely hard. And I think there's a lot of martial arts instructors that are like, they have that victim mindset. And then they also have this, I'm not deserving of the dream. That's for somebody else. I'm not deserving of that dream. And so, kudos to you for being an industry leader and just showing people that you can do it. You can be on a yacht, you can run a school.
I've always felt, and we also have a leadership program in my school. And of course, one of the first things everybody learns is leadership is by example. Example is the most powerful form of leadership there is. And if you're not out there living it and showing people. And so I spent a lot of time touring with all kinds of martial arts organizations, doing business talks and talking to people about the benefit of character development. And we just got to the point where, I think the very best way I can show people the benefits of what we do is to just go out there and live a life that they'd like to be doing. So we just decided to do that instead. It's why should I go to Vegas every year and talk to people when I can just come here. And now we have the internet. I can talk to people right now, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You guys really need to see what's all around me here. I have cords and stuff attached to this. I wish you could see a little more of what is all around me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's crystal clear water. We're in a little place called Christmas Cove in between St. Thomas and St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and it is spectacular. Wow. It is paradise.
So you're out there. You're semi-retired. You're cruising around on a yacht. Is that the future, or what is the future? What does the future look like for you? What are your aspirations for you and your family, and what are you doing? And both professionally and personally.
Well, cruising around the world is a goal, right? So we've done about 1,100 miles. Well, it's 1,100 miles from here to my home. We've done about so we sailed for 2 years in the Bahamas, a year in the Dominican Republic. We just did a month in Puerto Rico. Now we're in the Virgin Islands, and we're headed down to Grenada over the next 2 months. And after that, as we do all that, I'm going to take the boat back to the States, go up the East Coast. We want to do the East Coast of the U.S., and then I want to jump across the Bermuda to the Azores and to the Mediterranean Sea. So my goal is to cross oceans. We talked a little bit about responsibility and about being resilient. I know, Jennifer, when you're in the kickboxing ring, if something goes wrong, who is responsible?
Oh, heck yeah, 100%. It's my fault if I got punched in the face.
Right, and who's going to save you after that happens?
Nobody but me. Nobody.
Exactly. Well, let me tell you, cruising on a yacht is one of the reasons I'm so drawn to it. Is it's exactly the same as getting in the ring. Mm-hmm. I competed in a sport called sport jiu-jitsu, which is different from sport Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
which was kind of an early pioneering form of MMA, where it was full on punching and kicking, standing up, and then grappling, and then a time limit on the ground where they stood you back up after, say, 30 seconds of grappling, submission grappling. Yeah. And I fought for 3 years, and once I figured it out, I was undefeated for 2 years, touring up and down the East Coast of the U.S. doing these events. And I very much like the idea. And the reason I did this is it was the only rule set I could find that was close to a real fight before MMA really became a thing. And we don't do much competition anymore because the rule sets are taking away from the self-defense aspect instead of contributing to it in some way. We still do a lot of sparring and a lot of grappling, but not so much in competitions with rules that don't make sense. But when you're sailing on a yacht, one of the things they call cruising, the definition of cruising, is fixing your boat in exotic places, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm on a 2-day passage between islands and something stops working, guess who's fixing it?
Hey, you are.
I am, right? Now, so there's no, you can't call AAA and pull over to the side of the road. That's not the way. So it's that kind of thing. That the same thing with what you guys are doing. I'm sure it's kind of like homesteading, right? Where you're creating it's about being self-reliant, right? And this yacht, this is my bug out location. You understand? This is where I go when civilization fails. Okay, that I can go anywhere that I want to, and I prefer to be by the water anyway, so it's the perfect. But the yacht is basically a floating 4-bedroom apartment, and it's self-sufficient. You can see the solar panels on the arch behind me. We've got 2 more of those solar panels right above me. So, and we've got air conditioning and beautiful kitchen and everything else, so we can live life anywhere and don't have to be dependent on anyone. So I very much enjoy that. And it's one of the reasons I've enjoyed this podcast so much this morning is when you're out here like this, you get to meet really interesting people, okay? Because when you pull up to the yacht in front of me is worth at least $2 million, okay? And I want to meet those people. I want to go on their boat and have cocktails. I want to find out because I know they've accomplished something in their life. And the fact that they've managed to get that boat here proves to me that you're a competent human being in some way or another, right? That they've got skills. Because if you don't have skills, you're not out here. I can't tell you how many boats I saw in the harbor before me where there's 4 or 5 yachts just up on the embankments with holes in them.
Oh my gosh.
It's a sad story. I'm sure there's a sad story behind each of those yachts. The particular skill, like professional fighting, weeds out the people who can't hack it very quickly.
Yeah,
it's a very similar vibe, and I just enjoy being out here and meeting people of a similar a similar skill set and people that are self-sufficient and learning from them, and they learn from us. And it's a real great experience. And it's not just seeing exotic places; it's the challenge of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I am not at 55 years old ready to do a comeback tour and get back in the ring and start fighting again. I found a new challenge to conquer. I already conquered that. It's on to the new pastures, right? And I do look forward to, continuing to build my school as training my staff and giving them this life, right? Getting my staff to the point that eventually they will take over the school from me. My wife and I were not blessed with children. We practiced a lot, but we're never successful for some reason. I don't know. And so my staff is going to inherit my school one way or another. They're the ones that are working it. They're the ones that are earning it. And so I look forward to continuing to prepare them and help them grow as martial artists and as business people and as leaders to keep my legacy, which my school primarily is, alive. So those two things, sailing around the world and we continuing to help school owners. Black Belt Principles is still alive and well. A lot of people might question that when they haven't seen us at the 14 million martial arts events.
Yeah.
We have a lot of schools that have been with in that program since 2005, 2006, since we brought it out, and still doing it. Of course, the COVID did horrible things to our industry, and it didn't. All of us that have businesses that serve school, it didn't do a lot for us either, right?
Right.
It was really made a tough times for a lot of people. We let a lot of people use the program for free through COVID because, what are we going to do, right? If the government won't let you serve your students. So we did that as well to help them stay on their feet and deliver some value. One of the nice things about the digital things that we deliver, they were able to deliver those things over Zoom too. They were able to screen share with a laptop and show a visual aid and give a mat chat. That it was difficult to deliver some of our physical skills, but our member schools were able to continue to deliver some of their character development lessons, as well as by emailing small clips of videos of our characters talking about character development and sending them coloring sheets that they can download. There's been a lot. You guys have been in the industry a long time. You see some things out there from other consultants and such, just make you shake your head. Do you see some of that kind of thing?
Yes.
There's been a lot of people who have tried to copy us over the years. Some of even the organizations that we used to go do their shows, and then they come out with a competing product, right? A lot of that stuff out there. And one of the things we do with our visually based character development system is we provide a coloring sheet as homework. So the kids see the visual aid, they take that same visual home as homework to color them. So they're at home thinking about that visual, thinking about that mat chat and what that means as they color that image. And they bring it back and we display it in the school. And of course, there's nothing that shows you're kid friendly than a bulletin board full of kid coloring sheets on your wall in your martial arts school, right?
Yeah.
The thing of it is that coloring sheet is a tool with very specific purpose to get that kid to stay home and look at Harry doing this particular example of character development so that it inspires them to do so. And there's 14 million people out there now producing martial arts coloring books. They're giving out coloring sheets. And what's the coloring sheet? It's the word perseverance.
Yeah.
They got to color out the word. They're trying to steal my stuff, but they're not stealing my stuff. They're not stealing the effectiveness. They may have, we have coloring sheets too. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But you're not teaching them anything. That's the thing. Yeah, I'm sure the parents see them coloring that and go, oh, wow, they're not learning about perseverance. They can't even make any sense at all. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And how many times do I get friend requests on Facebook? And I don't just approve them anymore because I've got like 4,900 friends and I don't need friends. But I look at them and it says, we help school owners do this, or I get, and I just say, oh, great, you're going to help me. How big is your yacht? You're bigger than mine. I will take some advice from you. But other than that, no, I'm not interested. Thank you.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of conflicting advice, and I think that at least from the perspective of how I look at things, and just outside this industry too. I mean, we're involved in a lot of business mentorship and things like that. And it's always about looking at, one, what's the track record of this person? Did they just start doing this yesterday? and now, and that's something that I see a lot in this industry. There's a lot of people who just started doing this like a year or two ago. I mean, Dad and I didn't even start talking to school owners until we'd already been at over $1 million plus a year, multiple seven figures for 10 years. And then we started talking about it. And so I think that that's something like you guys developed the Black Belt principles. You'd been doing it in your own school and you had really hearing you talk about it, you've invested a lot of time, a lot of money in development.
A lot of money. Sarah, what is the current price per second of digital animation? A minute or a second? My wife is telling me that it's tens of thousands of dollars a second to produce digital animation these days.
Crazy.
So yeah. And we produced 2 22-minute cartoons in addition to dozens of small clips that can be played in the school or emailed home. Yeah, we put a huge amount of money into this. To some degree, we first envisioned, as an ex-financial planner, for a long time, I did not own stock. Because if you ever know somebody who used to work at Taco Bell and then wouldn't eat there, yeah, that was me for a long time. So we built Black Belt Principles with the idea that this was going to be our legacy, and to some degree was going to be our retirement plan. So we invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in developing the material that's there. And then when COVID hit, my wife went in another direction, which just strengthens us that much, which was writing books.
Yep.
So she's written 11. Our member schools could actually retail them wholesale in their buy them wholesale from us and retail them in their school. And they're all over Amazon and getting book reviewed. They're in Barnes and Noble. It's a real thing. And that's another interesting thing. And I'm going to give you a little advice if you're ever evaluating an author that you get on your podcast. Go to their books on Amazon and look at what they're ranking. There is an Amazon ranking for every book. Okay. And that Amazon ranking is where you are in all the books on Amazon. Now, there's a lot of books on Amazon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of books on Amazon. But if you see somebody and they're ranked 80 million, nobody's buying that book with them. You understand?
Yeah.
Nobody's buying that book. If they're ranked 80 million, they wrote that book to establish themselves as an expert, and them and 5 of their friends bought it. And that's all that's been sold, right?
Yeah.
If you see books that are selling in the million and under or 100,000 under, I've seen Sarah's books at 60,000.
That's incredible.
She just said 16,000. Well, 16,000 out of 100 million books. Those books are flying off the shelf. Unfortunately, it seems that my wife's anger book is the most popular. There's a lot of angry children out there in the world for some reason. Help Ringo tame his temper. Wow, that's a bestseller.
Yeah.
Anyway, definitely something out there because there are a lot of people, and that it all comes down to that. This is like a unifying theme in everything we talked about today. There are people out there that are attempting to appear they know what they're doing, and attempting to give other people the appearance. You have a belt, you don't know how to fight though, right? Give the appearance of knowing something and selling that image rather than actually delivering the goods, right? There's a lot of people that attempt to appear successful to, they'll go rent a Lamborghini and show themselves in all these influencers, right? To try, and that's the world we live in right now, where 90% don't believe anything you see because it's all been manufactured. And there's a lot of that going on in this industry. There's a lot of it going on in the world. And if I had to tell everybody, that needs to stop. We need to look for, like you said, how long have you been doing this and what results have you got and what proof do you have of the results that you have, right? Because man, you don't take people on their word. There's a lot of people making a lot of money that aren't delivering anything. That's a scary thought.
True.
Yeah. Well, listen, Stan, this has been super fun. I'm so glad we finally got to connect all together. I really appreciate you being here. Where do people find more about Black Belt Principles? Like, how do they get in touch with you? Like, what does that look like?
The easiest way, I do still spend a lot of time on Facebook, unfortunately. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. It's how we've connected, over the years. As well as we have 2 Black Belt Principles website, blackbeltprinciples.com, blackbeltprinciples.net. Either of those have the ability to contact us. My wife's books can be looked at or purchased at adventuresofharryandfriends.com, or you can look her name is Sarah Belisa Tucker. She didn't want to be Sarah Lee, the pie lady. I'm not going to, and I'm secure enough I'm secure. Well, my wife also had a thriving career before she met me under her name when she was, on television with Fox and everything else.
Yeah.
So she didn't take my name, but I'm secure enough in my manhood, as you can probably tell, that I didn't need that from her. So Sarah Belisa Tucker, Belisa Beliza. If you look that up on an Amazon search, you can see all her books, as well as her book's website, which is adventuresofharryandfriends.com. School owners that want to get involved in our character development system can also look at Harry and Friends Black Belt Principles on Facebook. They can look at blackbeltprinciples.com, blackbeltprinciples.net. They can feel free to email me, stanley@cfl.rr.com, or my wife, Sarah, at oceanairproductions.com, or oceanairproductions@gmail.com. So I think that's just about every single different way. Besides,
yeah. Well, guys, listen, if you are in need of character development in your school and you've been motivated by this podcast,
you probably do need it. You might not know you need it, but you probably need it.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thanks, Stan. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to connecting again in the future. This was great.
Fly out. We're in the Virgin Islands. I've got 4 cabins.
Hey, there you go. All right. Thanks again. Appreciate it.